Hello and welcome to this Power Automate in a Day, Lab 7. In this exercise, you will create a Power Apps application that call a Power Automate flow. So here you will create a very basic calculator in Power Automate and you will call this flow from Power Apps. So there are many situations where you need to move all the complexity into a Power Automate, but you should be able to call this Power Automate and to get some response back from a Power Apps application. So let's go. Okay, let's create a Power Automate flow. And the flow should be an instant flow because it's triggered immediately when we click a button on a Power Apps, for instance. So let's name the flow simple calculator. And the trigger must be this one, when a Power Apps call a flow. V2 at the moment, we have V2. And we will define some input parameter, like we want to calculate, for instance, the addition or multiplication of two numbers. So let's name this. So the parameter should be a number, and the name should be here. Let's call it x, and a second parameter, let's call it y. So make sure that number, and we can add a third parameter which specifies the type of operation. So add, multiply, subtract, thing like this, operation. And this one should be, of course, a text. So we're gonna, in the flow, store the parameter in compose. And let's name the first compose x, and x, we can copy that for the other parameter, for y, and yeah, let's name this one compose y, and yeah, I can copy and paste. Right click, paste, and let's name it something like operation. Yes, operation. Okay, and we need to feed this compose. Yeah, just for information, I usually put param in the compose name when this corresponds to parameters, because I grab the value from the trigger so that I can make the difference between the params compose and the non-params compose. Well, just naming convention that I follow. Okay. And the logic is, in the first stage, that I will add an action. Yeah, I can put another compose just for storing or doing the calculation. So this one, let's call it calculation. And to return the result of the operation back to the Power Apps, I need to use, yeah, that's not a good connector. I need to use an action called return to flow and Power Apps. Yeah, it's not a good connector. If you type flow, you should find it. It's this one. It's in the Power Apps connector. Respond to a Power App or flow. Let's grab this one. And of course, here we will add an output parameter, a number here, and let's call it z, and we will feed this with the this one, yes, compose operation output. Save. Okay. Now in the compose calculation, I need to do the calculation. So in the first place, I will just use the add function to add to number. And then I will create another, I will improve that later on to make it more dynamic. Okay, so add, I'm gonna add compose X and compose param Y. Okay, save. Yes, yes. Of course, and I have to feed the parameter compose with value coming from the trigger. So let's go there and let's grab that from X. Let's grab that from trigger Y and let's take this from trigger when a power-up score V2 operation. Yeah, operation. Okay. Save. Let's test this one. We will improve it later on. And now to test this, we have to create a power-ups. So just make.powerups.com. Make sure you are in the same environment, right? So I was not in the same. I have to go back to productivity or default environment. Let's create a blank application, power-ups application. Blank Canva, could be mobile. Call flow, phone, skip here. And I have to put two text input for X and Y. So first one, copy, paste down below. And I'm going to put a button just to start the calculation and communicate with the flow. And a label just to display the value. So this is going to be X, and okay, that's fine. I can copy and paste this label down below. For Y, and I will have, I need another label to display the result. Right, yes. Calculate. Okay, and let's copy a label and let's put it down below for the solution. Well, or just describe the solution. So solution and another one below just to see the value. Remove this. Okay. And now I can, I can rename this. So let's rename them. Let's call them text input X. The other one, text input Y. I don't want to spend too much time on this, but okay. And the solution, so the label, let's call it label solution. Okay. Now, when I click calculate, I have to call the flow, and to link the application with a Power Automate flow, you have to go here, this three dot, and click Power Automate. And normally you should be able to see all the Power Automate. You see, click, yeah, here, Power Automate. And so the three dots. You should be able to see all the flow that are in the same solution or in the same environment. That can be called by a Power Apps. Simple calculator, select this one, make a reference to this one. Okay, and now when you in the on select event of the button, you can call the flow. So the flow is simple calculator dot run, and you just need to pass the parameter. So x, y, and the operation. So text input x dot could be text, yeah, text. And the other one, text input y dot text, and we will specify the add operation, right? We will hardcode the operation name, but later on we will display a list of potential operation like subtract, division, and things like this. But let's keep it simple for now. Okay. And we're going to store the result of the operation in a global variable, GBL solution. And the content of this global variable will be displayed in the label. So we're going to associate the text property of the label solution with GBL solution dot z. Okay. So and now if I run this flow, this application, let's say 10 and 30 or 20, calculate should give you 30, right? So that works very nice. Huh? So that's interesting. Now, what I want to do is I would like to provide a list of potential operation. So I'm going to use a combo box here. Let's say I have to go to combo box here, right? And in the combo box, I'm going to display a couple of value in an array like this, add subtract. So bracket, add, comma, subtract, comma, multiply, add. So there is a bracket in front of that. Okay, like this. Okay, and I'm going to pass the value of this selected operation to the flow. And of course, the flow will have to be updated to take this operation name into account. So let's rename the combo box operation. And when I call calculate, I'm going to send as a third parameter combo box operation dot selected dot value, right? And I will update the flow afterwards. So let's test this, and I need to only authorize one value, one selected value. So let's go back to combo box, and here let's select allow multiple selection off. Okay, now it's better. Okay, only one operation. So that's fine. And of course, I need to update my flow to take this new option into account. Right? So the operation is stored in the compose param, and I need to check the operation. Let's edit the flow. And what we will do here is we're gonna use the switch action to check the operation. So basically here, I'm gonna add a switch. So if you type switch, it is in the control connector switch, and you can compare the value of the operation okay. And if the value of the operation, of the compose param operation, if the value is add, then you will use the add function. We usually rename the case like this. We're gonna add a new case for what? For subtract. So if, and another one for multiply. So my goal is also to introduce case. Of course, you need to test the value here in each case. So multiply, if it's equal to multiply. By default, it's going to be add. So if it's not add, not subtract, not multiply, by default, we're going to implement add, something like this. So basically, what we need to do is we need to use a variable because we cannot use a compose here. We cannot initialize a compose in several places. So we need to create a variable just to store the result. So let's use the initialize variable. Let's call this z, like this, right? So name is z. It should be a float. It's more than integer. Okay. And now in the switch, we will set the value in this variable. Let's call the switch here, switch operation. So here in the add case, we're gonna use so in the add case, we're gonna use the set variable action where we will do the calculation. So set variable z, we're gonna change z, and the value here will be the result of a function. The function is called add in Automate, and we can add two number, the compose param x and the compose param y. Click add, OK. All right, so We can copy and paste this to subtract, and we'll just change the name of the function. Okay, just rename variable z. You cannot have twice the same name, so I'll put usually underscore after the name of the action. And add should be it's subtract. So no, there's no subtract function. There is sub function. So there is a sub function. So if you want to see, yeah, sub, right? So if you want to see the list of function with the description, you can go down below, right? So here, fx, if you have a string function here, and down below you get some additional information about conversion math function. You see, we have add, we have sub, we have mul for multiply. Okay, so what we need is sub. So let's replace add with sub. Of course, I recommend you to take a look at documentation. Same, let's copy and paste that to multiply. Right click, paste, and instead of sub, we're going to use mul for mul. Okay, good. Name this. Yeah. Don't forget to click the add button, right? All right. And in the default, we're going to do an addition. So if it's not multiply, not subtract, not add, then by default it's going to be an add. Or if you don't specify anything. Let's rename it like this, several underscore. Okay. So in the response here, we just need to return the z variable. And we need to delete this compose. We don't need it anymore. Delete. So yeah, so let's save this. Okay, if you get an error here, enter valid JSON. If you have this issue, what you have to do is to remove the response to power-ups and recreate it. Okay, it's a nasty bug, but it is what it is. So let's type flow response to a power-ups or flow, add an output number and z save, and it works. Okay, that is cool. Nice. So we can test this in power-ups. Yeah, I need to update this. It's not a sub, it's a mul. Multiply is mul, right? So I did forget to click update. Oh, okay. Save and test this. Now we need, before that, you need to go to Portmate and refresh the workflow. Refresh, because if you change something in the return or in the input or in the output, you need to refresh in the application. So click calculate. It should give you 31. Now select subtract. Click calculate. Multiply. It should get to 220. We have subtract, etc. So if I say 11.8 should give me 3 for subtract. And and it works. Okay, cool. Now we can check the flow runs. One of the benefits of moving the logic to a flow is that you can reuse a flow across several applications as well. So it's better reusability, better debugging. All right, so let's say now you want to request approval to someone before doing the operation. I so let's add an approval. So an approval in this flow, of course, this doesn't make sense in this business scenario, but let's say in a business process you want to put an approval. Okay. So let's create the approval here before the switch. Assign to myself. Then that means, okay, so the detail, can I make or proceed the following operation? This, the operation, and like this. Okay, so basically that means the approver it might take several weeks before the approver approve, right? And if your application called this flow, it doesn't have to wait several weeks to get the response. So you're in a asynchronous scenario, but you still want to trigger the operation, right? So the response to Power Up or flow in this case should move before the start and wait for an approval. Okay? Otherwise, your application would be stuck. And of course, the flow cannot return so like this. So you can do that. This is supported. So the flow will return some HTTP response back to the application, which does not contain the response. However, like this, the flow will still keep working in the background, right? So this is fully supported, and you need to store the answer maybe in a database, or you can send an email, something like this. But now you are in an asynchronous scenario. But you can kick off this asynchronous scenario from Power Apps. So it's a good pattern that you can follow. Of course, if you change the return to a flow signature in the flow, you need to refresh the Power Apps application. Okay, so that's important. All right, that's it for this lab. I hope that you enjoy it and you are ready to move to the next one. Thank you.